Hey everybody, Nick Espinosa, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week as always. And before I begin, as always, I'd like to thank the following people that sent me a ton of this information. That is Jacqueline Wolf, Chris Fallon, David Walker, Jason Dance, and Barrett Peterson. Guys, thank you so very much. And if you have a tip for me, I'm more than happy to give you a shout out here and also on my nationally syndicated radio show, so thank you very much in advance. Now with that, let's begin in Lithuania, because we are talking about the Lithuanian Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They just declined to comment about the authenticity of email files allegedly stolen from their network and offered for sale, apparently on a data trading forum. Now, the cache of data supposedly consists of 1.6 million emails containing the conversations and documents marked as sensitive and highly sensitive in nature. And according to the seller, this is basically 102 PST files. Those are Outlook data files that were converted from offline Outlook data files, and that's about 300 gigabytes in size. Now, if the description is accurate, these emails should also come with attachments as well, meaning it's a full PST, as it essentially has everything, emails, documents, you name it. Now, the forum user basically made claims essentially to drum up interest in the data, and also claimed that the correspondence contains secret negotiations, conspiracies against US President Biden, and, quote, preparation for the war with Belarus. So obviously that's a huge thing. We'll see what happens, but the Lithuanian government right now isn't saying anything. I don't even know if they're going to war with Belarus, but if they are, maybe that confirms this. We'll see what happens. Moving on. Let's talk about Docusign, because if you're in business, odds are you use Docusign in one way, shape, or form, whether somebody's sending you one or you're using it yourself. We have to talk about a phishing alert that just came out for Docusign. Now, rather than spoofing Docusign notifications, which, you get that fake, hey, click here for your Docusign, it's not Docusign, phishing scammers are now signing up for free accounts with Docusign and compromising the accounts of others as a way to trick email recipients into clicking on malicious links. So in other words, they might have an actual legitimate Docusign account, and therefore it's bypassing spam filters. Now, prospective victims of the scam receive an invitation to click a link in order to view a document in their browser and then sign it. Now, Docusign normally converts those documents into static PDFs, therefore preventing the user from mistakenly enabling a malicious macro. However, these PDFs still have viable hypertext links, meaning a link to click somewhere to the internet or somewhere else. And if you click that, that could deliver basically a malicious document or direct a user to a phishing page. On top of that, cyber criminals hide the true nature of the links and downloaded files through sophisticated obfuscation techniques. This includes using things like steganography, to spoof file extensions and make them look like file types that are accepted and supported by Docusign, as a way to get around the security measures that are designed to prevent malicious attachments. The point being is, if you're getting something from Docusign, even if you know it's coming, you might want to verify that it was actually sent by the user before actually clicking it, or if you have the ability to sandbox, please sandbox those things, not to mention having good DNS web filters, firewalls, etc., etc. So there you go, heads up, Docusign scam. So for a Docusign scam. Moving on, let's talk about Microsoft, because they have the new Windows 365 Cloud PC service, and already a major vulnerability has been discovered. Now, a security researcher figured out a way to basically dump users' unencrypted plain text Microsoft Azure credentials from the new Windows 365 Cloud PC service using a free utility. I know what that free utility is, but for the layman people, I'm not going to dive into that. Now, I'm sure if you're in my field, you probably know what I'm talking about. Now, while created for the researchers due to the power of its various modules, this free utility is commonly used by threat actors to basically dump plain text passwords from various processes to essentially break NTLM hashes, meaning they are essentially getting into things like Active Directory domain controllers, and it allows them to move laterally throughout a network. Microsoft obviously is aware of this problem. That's a huge issue. It's something they've needed to work on for quite some time outside of the 365 Cloud PC, but apparently it has the same old vulnerability that we've seen in Active Directory networks for quite some time. Hopefully they will get that figured out. So heads up, if you're using the new 365 Cloud PC, I know it's been in demo mode. They've offered a couple of months free for people to get used to it, but it's coming out in full force soon. Moving on, let's talk about Revel. This is the now former ransomware gang that may have morphed into something else. We have an update on Revel, the original Revel, or R-Evil, and here's what's going on. Flashpoint analysts have identified a post on the Russian language XSS forum, which basically a threat actor operating under the alias Urkano plan posted a possible master key for all of Revel's encryption, and apparently he put a screenshot on GitHub of this. Now, so far, Flashpoint analysts have been able to attribute this key to restoration of data basically associated with the recent Kaseya ransomware attack. If you recall, something like 2,000 plus companies were hit in one shot, leveraging the Kaseya platform to get into these companies, and a master key was delivered apparently to Kaseya, but they were having everybody sign NDAs. It's very possible somebody dumped that master key out there. Now, this unknown actor, Ekrano plan, I think that's how you say it, shared a link to a screenshot on August 6th of this month, and this user does not appear to have any further posting or history on this forum. Several users questioned the utility of the screenshot in decrypting files, to which Ekrano plan answered in Russian, and I quote, "This was provided to us by our parent company and is not supposed to work for all Revel victims, or is supposed to work for all Revel victims, not just us." Now, obviously, the origins of this person are unknown. Flashpoint analysts basically tested this decryptor, and as one user in the thread highlighted, replacing the decryption key with this particular key actually works. So we will see, but we may have a master key. So if you've got encrypted data from Revel, you might want to get your hands on this. This might actually do the trick and finally get you your data back, especially if you didn't pay that ransom. Moving on, let's talk about Senior Advisor. This is a review website, apparently. I've never heard of it, but the personal data for more than 3 million U.S. senior citizens was exposed in basically a security oversight by Senior Advisor. Now, researchers at WizCase discovered that a misconfigured Amazon bucket, basically this was storing data for users, surnames, emails, phone numbers, and data belonging to people marked as leads or potential customers, was found. They also found 2,000 scrubbed reviews from which the user's sensitive information had been wiped or redacted. However, these reviews had a lead ID that could then trace basically the review back to the post author. So while it might be obfuscated on, let's say, the website itself, the backend can see who had that review scrubbed. This, again, is Senior Advisor. So if you use Senior Advisor for all your senior advising needs, whatever they do, heads up to you. Now, moving on. Let's talk about 1 million stolen bank and credit card data, because recently the threat intelligence group, Group IB, along with the attribution system, which is weird. Their threat intelligence system, excuse me. Can't even read my own notes here. They basically found a forum that had 1 million stolen bank and credit card data out there. And basically they're calling this AW_cards. And it basically, there was a link that posted directly to a file that has 1 million bank cards in it. And according to the report, the file was available for free, and it has data from nearly 1,000 banks from 100 different countries. However, the analysts detected there are countries like Mexico, Australia, Brazil, the United States, India, and more. This is possibly a repeat of a previous data breach because these are common. So I went looking through my notes for the past 3 weeks, and I could not find one. So I think this is a brand new 1 million credit card number dump out there that anybody can go and get for free. Hopefully this is old. Hopefully these are aged. Hopefully these cards are no longer valid. We'll see, but this is why we also need to check our credit card statements. Moving on, let's talk about the Australian government because they just issued a warning. Now, the Australian Cybersecurity Centre, or ACSC, warned of an increase in Lockbit 2.0 ransomware attacks against Australian entities starting in July of this year. Now, the agency also published a ransomware profile with additional information on Lockbit, including initial access indicators, targeted sectors, mitigation measures, etc. It also added that these threat actors are opportunistic and could target organizations from any industry sector across Australia. That's true for the record of the world. Therefore, not being included in the list of already targeted sectors doesn't necessarily mean that you won't be a target in the future. They oftentimes do their reconnaissance, and if they think you're cash rich, they're going to hit you. So heads up to you if you're in Australia, but quite frankly, if you're in the world, heads up to you on Lockbit. The Australian government is putting out good information that is good for Aussies and everybody else. Moving on, let's talk about blockchain provider Polynex. This is an interesting one because this past Tuesday morning, Polynex reported it had come under attack, which allowed an attacker to loot cryptocurrency assets belonging to tens of thousands of users. Now, this attacker transferred the stolen funds into 3 different wallets, which originally contained over $600 million US in various cryptocurrencies, according to CoinDesk. Now, in response, Polynex called on cryptocurrency exchanges and miners not to accept transactions from the hacker-controlled wallets, those that they identified. In addition, Polynex published a letter addressed to the culprit, basically asking them to return these kinds of funds. Good luck with that. We'll see where that goes, but if anything, it really underscores the unregulated nature of cryptocurrency. There is no FDIC insurance for your investment if you're on Polynex, so that's obviously a huge issue. And speaking of cryptocurrencies and unregulated, we're going to talk about Polynex. Polynex. It's a cryptocurrency exchange. I've never heard of them, but the Securities and Exchange Commission here in the United States, or SEC, knows about them because they just announced that they had reached a $10 million settlement with Polynex, the cryptocurrency exchange, which allegedly offered an unregulated platform for trading digital assets between July of 2017 and November of 2019. Now, basically, it appears that Polynex employees allegedly repeatedly acknowledge the possibility that enabling the trading of regulated digital assets without registering as a national securities exchange or seeking an exemption from the requirement is what happened here. It seems they simply decided that the potential upside for supporting the burgeoning digital asset market was worth the risk of later repercussions. So if they made more than $10 million, probably a lot more, they made out like a bandit. So Polynex executives, you tell me if it was worth it. Investors, you tell me if it was worth it too. Moving on. Let's talk about the city of Joplin, I believe, Missouri. The Joplin city government basically were down due to a ransomware attack about a month ago or so. I remember reporting on that. And we just found out that their insurer opted to pay $320,000 to prevent the leak of stolen information during that ransomware attack. So that's your tax dollars at work, unfortunately. There you go. I have to imagine they probably could have spent a little less than $320,000 to get better defense. Moving on, let's talk about game developer and publisher Crytek, because the Egregor ransomware gang apparently breached their systems in October of 2020, encrypted their systems, and started stealing files containing customers' personal information, which was later leaked on the dark web site. That's all I've got for now. I checked the data on this. This literally was published this past week, so I went back looking. I couldn't find Crytek, so this is new from last year, and so Crytek has some answering to do. I don't know more, but as I do, believe me, I will let you know here. Moving on, let's continue on with basically cryptocurrency fun and talk about Thorchain. This apparently is a decentralized liquidity protocol. They suffered an attack leading to the losses of around $8 million. Now, an attacker actually tricked the Bifrost protocol into accepting a fake deposit, then received a refund for the assets even though it hadn't deposited basically anything. It's the third major incident that hit Thorchain in 1 month. Bifrost exploit led to the loss of $5 million from that platform only a week ago. So that's obviously a huge problem. So if you're using the Thorchain decentralized liquidity protocol, you might want to consider switching. Moving on, let's talk about Japanese manufacturer Mirada. This is an update, actually. They released an apology for the leak of thousands of files in June that contained bank account information for employees and business partners of the company. The CEO of Mirada Manufacturing, Norio Nakajima, released a statement apologizing for an incident on June 28th when a subcontractor downloaded a project management file containing 72,460 pieces of information. More than 30,000 of those documents contain business partner information like company name, address, associated names, phone numbers, email addresses, bank account numbers. The companies are based, basically the victim companies are based in Japan, China, Philippines, Malaysia, Singapore, and the United States, as well as the EU, but enterprises are subject to customer information are only China and the Philippines. So obviously those two hit the worst. Now, Over 41,000 of those documents about employees were in the leak as well, containing names, addresses, and bank account numbers. The employees were based in the company offices in Japan, China, Philippines, Singapore, US, and EU. So heads up to you if you do business with or work for Mirada Manufacturing, your CEO is very sorry. Moving on, let's talk about Accenture, the massive consulting firm. They experienced a ransomware attack. The Lockbit ransomware gang, if you remember them from slightly earlier, reported basically the theft of 6 terabytes worth of Accenture's data. Lockbit is requesting a $50 million ransom payment without basically they're going to start releasing that private data. Now, basically how Accenture was infiltrated has not yet been determined. However, preliminary evidence suggests it could be an inside job. The Lockbit website hosted a message, quote, "These people are beyond privacy and security. I really hope that their services are better than what I saw as an insider. If you're interested in buying some databases, reach us." We'll see. Accenture has thousands and thousands of employees worldwide, so we'll see what happens there, but I have no doubt law enforcement, given who Accenture is, will be involved. Moving on, let's talk about T-Mobile. They're one of the major cellular carriers here in the United States, and they are saying that they are investigating a forum post claiming to be selling a mountain of personal data. Now, the forum post itself doesn't actually mention T-Mobile, but the seller told Motherboard by Vice that they have obtained data to over 100 million people, and that data came from T-Mobile servers. The data includes social security numbers, phone numbers, names, physical addresses, IMEI numbers for their mobile phones, driver's license information, and more. According to the seller, Motherboard by Vice saw samples of the data and confirmed that they did indeed contain accurate information on T-Mobile customers. This is not the first time in the last few years T-Mobile has had to declare a data breach or investigate one. It's been multiple times. And finally, we actually have to talk about ransomware demands, because we have numbers perpetually coming in, and I really like to close a lot of these breaches of the week as we get new numbers, new studies, new reports, especially from reputable outfits, like whether it's a research center like Pew or reputable cybersecurity researchers like Palo Alto's Unit 42, VMware, and others, which is what we're going to be talking about today, because according to a new report from Palo Alto Network's Unit 42, the average ransomware payment demanded by cyber criminals now tops 5.3 million, which is a 518% increase from 2020. Meanwhile, the average ransom paid is $570,000, which is an 82% increase over 2020, which was $312,000. Remember, you can have a ransom demand of $5 million. You can negotiate it down to, I guess, on average, $570,000. So don't think that when you see that high sticker shock, if you're in the ransomware event and you have to negotiate or you have to pay, that is going to be it. Oftentimes your insurance companies will help you negotiate. If not, give me a call. Now, also, the other thing that they really mentioned that I thought was interesting was quadruple extortion becoming more prevalent, and here's how this works. And before that, single extortion is simply locking out your files and saying, we won't unlock your files, we won't unlock your files unless you pay us. Double extortion is doing that, plus copying it out and putting onto a leak site and say, okay, we will leak your data to the public if you don't do that. Standard triple extortion, which is what we saw with a Taiwanese semiconductor manufacturer that was working with Apple, building basically Apple products, is that they got ransomed. They got hit and locked out. They got ransomed on a leak site, and then the attackers figured out they had Apple schematics, and so they went to Apple and said, hey, we want money from you too, because, well, Apple's got money. Triple extortion. Now, quadruple extortion is what Palo Alto was talking about, and it's a slightly different spin on double extortion. So what Palo Alto's Unit 42 is noticing is that after an encryption and data exfiltration, the ransomware gang launches a denial of service attack and shuts down the victim's public websites. And for step 4, so basically you've got the ransomware lockout, you've got the extortion on the leak site, you have a denial of service attack against your website to bring it down, and step 4 is harassment. The criminals actually contact the organization's customers, business partners, employees, and the media to let them know about the hack. This would basically be what we saw with Apple. So basically the manufacturer got hit, they got ransomed on a leak site, and they went to Apple. And the 4th step here would be that harassment. We're going to tell everybody about this. We're going to do this right now. We're going to get you in trouble. That is a life-ending event. Now, even more troubling is what we learned recently from VMware. on essentially the global overall population. Cybercrime last year in 2020 cost the world more than $1 trillion. What's even more worrisome is that Cybersecurity Ventures forecast global cybercrime costs are going to hit $10.5 trillion by 2025. Now, if you think about this, we are coasting into 2022 right now, which means we are 3 years and change from basically a tenfold increase. And essentially the standard logic, when we really started looking at this, and I started speaking on this around 2017, obviously I was speaking before this, but the stat I remember is from 2017 that said basically in about 5 years or so in 2021, the world, meaning you, me, our respective governments, organizations worldwide, will have collectively spent about $1 trillion on cyber defense strategies, and by 2021, the attackers will have extracted about $6 trillion from us, which is basically the largest wealth transfer in history, if you think about it. These numbers that VMware is putting out, 1 trillion just alone in last year, basically is what it cost the world. This is accelerating. This is getting worse. I mean, forget breach numbers going up or down. We could have half the breaches, but if the ransoms are 500% more, they're making a lot more and doing a lot less work. That normally is a good business model if they weren't jerks and should be arrested. So we're going to see where this goes. It's obviously very disturbing, but those were your breaches of the week. Thank you everybody that contributed to this. I really appreciate it. And so, were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe, stay online, and please stay private. Thanks, everyone.